Hi, I'm Didi West, and this is Broken Limelight. Today's episode's going to be a lot, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time. I'm going to break down the case against Bill Cosby and the charges against him for sexual assault. Surprisingly, a lot of people have no idea how deep these allegations go. Bill Cosby has been accused of sexual assault by about 68 women. The alleged assaults date back as far as the 1960s and up until 2008. Bill Cosby was convicted at one point, but he was released after serving only 2 years. He wasn't released because he was found to be innocent, however. It was more like an administrative fuck-up. But let's break it down from the beginning. Bill Cosby was born William Henry Cosby Jr., born July 12, 1937. He is a stand-up comedian, actor, and author, born and raised in Philadelphia to his parents Anna Pearl, who was a maid, and William Henry Cosby Sr., who served as a mess steward in the U.S. Navy. Bill Cosby was class president as well as the captain of both the baseball and track and field teams at his high school. He was known by his teachers for joking around a lot at school instead of studying, and he described himself as the class clown. As well as competing in sports, he enjoyed acting in plays. Cosby earned his high school equivalency diploma, and he was awarded a track and field scholarship to go to Temple University in 1961. He got a degree in physical education, and he played fullback on the college's football team. He began bartending at a Philadelphia club where he earned bigger tips by making the customers laugh. Later, he would appear as a comedian on several popular variety and talk shows on U.S. television, such as The Ed Sullivan Show, The Jack Paar Program, and The Dean Martin Show. Cosby also released comedy albums, 7 of which won Grammy Awards for Best Comedy Album. Cosby's big break was when he got the role of Alexander Scott, an undercover CIA agent on the NBC show I Spy. I Spy became the first weekly dramatic television series to feature a black person in a starring role. This was a huge deal because in the 60s, black people were often not getting big roles like this. I mean, they were always typecast as maids or chauffeurs or like a goofy comedic relief. So when Bill Cosby got this role in I Spy, his character was eloquent, educated, spoke several languages, and he really opened the door for black people to start demanding better roles. He went out there and represented black people in a different way than they had been seen before. Younger, well-established comics like Jerry Seinfeld had credited Cosby as an innovator, both as a practitioner of stand-up comedy, as well as a person who paved the way for comics to break into sitcom television. Jerry Seinfeld has said a lot in support of Bill Cosby. Like, I've seen interviews where he said that he doesn't understand how people can't separate the art from the artist. But let me just tell you something about Jerry Seinfeld. He's pretty fucking creepy. A lot of people don't know this, but when Jerry Seinfeld was 37 years old, he dated a 17-year-old girl. Bill Cosby had this joke that he started telling in about 1969. It's referred to as the Spanish fly joke. Spanish fly is supposed to be like an aphrodisiac that you would slip into a woman's drink. And then you would wait for the women to just get all loosey-goosey and hop into bed with you.
Spanish fly was the thing that all boys from age 11 on up to death, we will still be searching for Spanish fly. That's right. And what was the old story was, if you took a little drop, no, it was on the head of a pin. That's right. And drop you put it in a Coca-Cola. Don't matter. It doesn't make it, and the girl would drink it, and she's yours. Hello, America.
He told this joke for decades. And nobody really thought anything of it either. For a long time. Cosby went on to work in shows like Fat Albert and The Cosby Kids, and he did the show The Cosby Show, along with a few spin-offs. In 1997, Bill Cosby lost his only son, Ennis, when he was robbed and murdered on a Los Angeles highway after he stopped to fix a flat tire. Now, nobody really heard about Bill Cosby being a sexual predator until about 2014. Some people may know of Andrea Constand as the first person to come forward against Bill Cosby in 2005, but this actually wasn't the first time a woman tried to make accusations against Bill Cosby. In the year 2000, a 20-year-old actress named Lachelle Covington filed a police report against Bill Cosby. Lachelle had a recurring role as a waitress on The Cosby Show before this relationship with Cosby turned sour. Lachelle had a recurring role as a waitress on The Cosby Show. She alleges that Cosby put her hand under his t-shirt and guided it south towards his sweatpants, leading his hand to his groin area. However, Lachelle pulled her hand away before it got there, and that was the end of that. She told Cosby she was leaving, and he said, "That's fine." So she filed the police report, and the police consulted with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and they decided that no crime had been committed because until the very moment that Lachelle pulled her hand away, all actions had been consensual, supposedly. So, because she never actually touched his penis, they decided that no crime had been committed. The police decided to never question or charge the comedian. Lachelle's family says that he actually went further with her, but she didn't include that in her report. Her father said Bill Cosby scared her half to death. She ran out of the house. She was traumatized, and she didn't even tell her mother for 2 days. In 2005, a woman named Andrea Constand filed a police report alleging that Bill Cosby had drugged and raped her. Andrea was a former basketball player at Temple University, and she went to work for their basketball team. Cosby, who studied physical education in the early 60s, also served on its board of trustees and regularly attended their games. Andrea was introduced to Bill Cosby by a donor. Cosby became her mentor, and over the next 2 years, he earned Andrea's trust and that of her family. Andrea would attend dinner parties and stuff at Bill Cosby's home, and Cosby would later say that he had a romantic interest in her from the beginning, but Andrea wasn't aware of this. She was actually a lesbian, and she was in a relationship at that time. One day in 2004, Andrea visited Bill Cosby and confided in him about her stressful day, and she told him that she had a headache. Cosby offered her 3 blue pills. Andrea only took holistic medicine, so he was like, "Yeah, these are herbal." Shortly after taking the pills, Andrea started to get fuzzy and lose control of her muscles. She was semi-conscious as Bill Cosby allegedly touched her breasts and crotch and put her hands on his penis. She woke up around 4 a.m. to find her clothing askew. Cosby came in the room wearing a white bathrobe and offered her a muffin. Andrea had just put in her 2-month notice at her job, but in the meantime, she had to keep seeing him at work. She said that his voice felt like a stab in the gut. She decided that it was time for a career change, so she left her job and started training to become a massage therapist. Throughout her training, she started learning things about bodily consent. A year after the incident, Andrea was having nightmares, and she was dreaming that women were being assaulted right in front of her, and it was her fault. She was carrying a guilt for not coming forward, and she was worried that other women could also be victims, or worse, maybe more women already were victims because she hadn't come forward. After a particularly difficult nightmare, she called her mom on her drive to work and spilled everything. Bill Cosby drugged me and raped me. Andrea went to the police and filed a complaint. They did an investigation, and then the district attorney decided not to file any charges against Cosby. Cosby basically said, "We had a consensual encounter," and they decided that there was not enough evidence to prosecute him for anything. In February 2005, after learning that he would not be charged, Cosby was asked about Constand's allegations, and he said, "I'm not saying that what I did was wrong, but I apologize to my loving wife who has stood by my side for all these years for any pain that I have caused her." He vowed not to give in to people who try to exploit him because of his celebrity status. Another woman came forward in 2005 after learning that the charges were not pursued in Andrea's case. This was California lawyer Tamara Green. Tamara alleged that Bill Cosby groped and fondled her in her apartment in the 1970s after immobilizing her with what he said was cough medicine. She also alleged that Bill Cosby gave her pills when she was feeling sick at one of his restaurants. Around 30 minutes after taking the pill, she said that she lost all motor control and was face down in her lunch. Cosby then offered to drive her home. He helped her take off her clothes and got her into bed, and then he sexually assaulted her. She said, "He had gone from helping me to groping me, kissing me, touching me, and handling me." After she confronted him, Cosby left 2 $100 bills on her coffee table and left the apartment. Green said that she did not report him to authorities because, quote, "The first thing you feel is stupid, and then no one will believe you. This is the great Bill Cosby." A third woman came forward in 2005. Her name was Beth Ferrier. She alleged that in 1984 she was working as a model when she and Cosby had a brief affair. He invited her to a show, and when she arrived, he gave her a cappuccino and told her, "It's your favorite." After she drank it, she became dizzy and lost consciousness, until she woke up a few hours later in the backseat of her car alone, parked in the alleyway behind the venue. Her clothes were disheveled and her bra was undone. She was confused and disoriented and didn't remember anything after drinking the coffee. She confronted him after she came to her senses, and he told her that she had too much to drink. But she didn't have anything to drink except the coffee. Barbara Bowman was another woman who came forward in 2005. She alleged that when she was an 18-year-old aspiring actress in 1985, Cosby was her mentor and brainwashed her into viewing him as a father figure. Cosby gave her a glass of wine, she felt all doped up, and she says, "He pinned me down in his bed while I screamed for help. I'll never forget the clinking of his belt as he struggled to pull his pants off. I furiously tried to wrestle from his grasp until he eventually gave up, angrily called me a baby, and sent me home to Denver." Over the 4 days of depositions by Andrea Constand's attorneys, Bill Cosby testified that he obtained drugs with the intention of giving to women to encourage them to have sex with him. In November of 2006, Bill Cosby settled with Andrea Constand for over $3 million. But more and more women started to come forward. And before I get into that, I want to clear something up. There is a misconception that all of Bill Cosby's victims are white women, and this made people believe that this was just an attack on their black hero. But in reality, about 1/3 of the accusers are women of color. After Bill settled with Andrea, everything got quiet and nobody talked about what Bill Cosby did to any of those women who spoke up. Until 2014. On October 16, 2014, a stand-up comedian, Hannibal Buress, made a joke about Bill Cosby being a rapist. A reporter filmed it on his phone and it went viral, sparking a huge conversation and empowering more and more women to come forward. So what Hannibal Buress basically says is, Bill Cosby has the fucking smuggest old black man public persona that I hate. He gets on TV and says, "Pull your pants up, black people. I was on TV in the 80s. I can talk down to you because I had a successful sitcom. Yeah, but you rape women, Bill Cosby, so turn the crazy down a couple notches. I don't curse on stage. Well, yeah, but you're a rapist, so..." So then in 2014, a mountain of allegations occurred. Like, dozens and dozens of women came forward between 2014 and 2015. And I'm not going to get into all of their individual stories just because they're like crazy similar. He always gave them or a pill or a glass of wine or a cappuccino or some kind of drink or something. A lot of these women were young models or young actresses, and Bill Cosby was mentoring them. And I can understand where that's confusing. Initially, I was sitting here wondering, like, how was he going to mentor a model and a basketball player? And, like, what advice could he possibly offer these women? I tried to put myself in their shoes, and what I imagine is that he didn't come to them as, like, a business partner, but maybe rather as, like, a father figure or a grandfather figure who is proud of you and wants to see you succeed. So maybe he wasn't like, "I'm going to teach you how to walk on the runway," but rather, "I'm going to find you the perfect photographer to get you headshots, and I'm going to get you a manager, and I'm going to connect you to this agency." I mean, remember, Bill Cosby was somebody who was well respected within colleges. He was donating to charities, and he had all these scholarships. He had a lot of connections. And again, he's America's dad. So I can only imagine that it wasn't just a business thing, but he provided some kind of warmth and familiarity. Like, "I believe in you. I'm going to help you." One of the documentaries I watched about this was called "We Need to Talk About Cosby." It's really good. I highly recommend it. But they also interview a lot of celebrities, like actors from The Cosby Show. What I found interesting was that for the most part, these actors didn't want to believe it. They initially were like, "No, that's bullshit. These people are lying. They're all copying each other's stories. It's not real." And little by little, they believe it. They spoke to somebody and realized, oh my God, it's true at least for that person, so it must be true for more of them. And a lot of them recall models going in and out of his dressing room. So some of these accusers include Joan Tarshis, Linda Joy Traits, Janice Dickinson, the model. She testified that Cosby gave her a pill and then was rendered motionless, and then he got on top of her. The next morning, she felt vaginal pain and noticed semen between her legs. Janice said that she wrote about her assault in her 2002 autobiography. However, Cosby and his lawyers pressured her and the publisher to remove all of those details. So she actually tried to come forward before any of this. And that's another difficult thing, is that a lot of women don't exactly remember what happened. They just remember waking up with the vaginal pain or semen on them or next to Bill Cosby's naked body, and they might have like flashes of seeing his skin and things like that, but they don't remember exactly what happened. And this is what made it so difficult. And a lot of people didn't believe them. Some other notable names: Carla Ferrigno. She's the wife of Lou Ferrigno, the fucking Incredible Hulk. She says that in 1967, when she was a teenager, she went on a double date with Bill Cosby and his wife, and Cosby got her alone at some moment, grabbed her and kissed her hard before she pushed him off of him and ran back to her date, who then took her home. By the way, Bill Cosby was about 12 years older than her. Like I said, many of these women were models, and a lot of them were assaulted in the same place, which was the Elvis Presley suite at the Las Vegas Hilton Hotel. On November 23, 2014, a former employee of NBC Entertainment who says that he worked for Bill Cosby came forward to say that he regularly brought women to Bill Cosby's dressing room, and he was also asked to send money to multiple women over the years. Frank Scotti was 90 years old now. He claimed that as Cosby's right-hand man, it was his job to guard the door after bringing young women to his dressing room in Brooklyn, but that he doesn't know what went on behind closed doors. There were also numerous Playboy playmates or Playboy buddies that alleged that Bill Cosby assaulted them as well. Apparently, Bill Cosby was best buddies with Hugh Hefner, and he would hang out there all the time. Among these women are Victoria Valentina, P.J. Matson, and among all of these assaults, there are even accusations of some women being underage. Judy Huth alleges that she was 15 years old when she met Bill Cosby on the set of a movie that he was filming. He invited them to his tennis club the following weekend, and there he served them multiple alcoholic drinks before taking them to a party at the Playboy Mansion. Huth alleges that at the party, Bill Cosby molested her by putting his hand down her pants and then taking her hand and using it to perform a sex act on himself. By the way, a jury in California actually found Bill Cosby guilty of this sexual assault on Judy in 1975, when she was a minor. Dozens and dozens of women came forward between 2014 and 2015. In July of 2015, the court documents from Constand's case in 2005 were released. Those were the ones in which Bill Cosby had admitted to giving a woman quaaludes to try to have sex. This information wasn't released to the public before. New York Magazine released a cover photo of 35 of Bill Cosby's accusers and featured their stories about their assaults and their decisions to come forward. At this point, all of these universities and colleges started to pull Cosby's honorary degrees and return any donated funds they had received from him and his wife. One of the most recent alleged assaults occurred in 2008. This was Chloe Goins, a 25-year-old Las Vegas model and one of the youngest women to come forward. She filed a lawsuit against Cosby claiming that he drugged and assaulted her in 2008 when she was only 18. She believes that Bill Cosby spiked her drink at a Playboy party, and after drinking it, she immediately began sick to her stomach and became dizzy. She awoke to Cosby masturbating and biting her toes and said that her body was wet as though she had been licked. Chloe's lawsuit accuses Cosby of sexual battery, gender violence, intentional emotional distress, and it also accuses Hugh Hefner of conspiracy. There might be more women from the Playboy Mansion that are not coming forward. According to P.J. Matson, there's at least a dozen. Because of Bill Cosby's relationship with Hugh Hefner, none of them want to open that can of worms. In December 2015, Bill Cosby filed defamation countersuits against 7 women who accused him of sexual misconduct, including Beverly Johnson. Cosby's lawyer said in a statement, he never drugged the defendant and her story is a lie. By February 2016, Cosby would drop his lawsuit against Beverly Johnson. The district attorney from the 2005 case testified that he didn't file charges back then because he didn't think that the Constand allegations would stand up in court. In March, Cosby was ordered to stand trial in the sexual assault case, and he waived a formal arraignment, thus entering a plea of not guilty. By now, Cosby was completely blind. He suffers from a degenerative eye condition that causes the cornea to bulge. In July of 2017, the criminal case against Bill Cosby ended in a mistrial. The jury was unable to render a unanimous verdict on any of the 3 counts against Bill Cosby. Cosby's second trial began in April 2018. He was charged with drugging and sexually assaulting Andrea Constand at his Pennsylvania home during a visit that she made in 2004. Again, Cosby denied the charge and said that any sexual encounters were consensual. The judge allowed 5 additional women who had accused Bill Cosby to take the stand as prosecution witnesses to corroborate Constand's account. For the first time ever, the prosecution publicly said that Cosby paid his primary accuser $3.38 million in exchange for her silence about him allegedly drugging and sexually assaulting her. The jury began their deliberation. Cosby was convicted on 3 felony accounts of aggravated indecent assault in the case involving Constand and 2 others. The judge sentenced Cosby to 3 to 10 years in state prison. He was denied bail during the pending appeals. After a little over 2 years, Bill Cosby's conviction was overturned. Apparently, Bill Cosby had some kind of verbal agreement with a prosecutor back in the first case, and apparently it was only because of this deal that Bill Cosby admitted to giving women quaaludes with the intention of having sex with them. So my understanding is it's kind of like Bill Cosby was offered immunity for testifying about himself, which doesn't make any sense. It seems like some prosecutor early on fucked up and made him this promise, and Cosby was like, well, I would have never said that if this wasn't promised to me. So Bill Cosby was released from prison. However, it does not mean that he was deemed to be innocent. So I hope that lays that to rest. If you really don't think Bill Cosby is guilty, I don't know what to tell you, man. I mean, I understand people think that women are coming after his money, but it's really funny because there's actually not really any money in this. And in fact, it's kind of a big risk to go after somebody like him. Like, you're risking losing a lot of money by going after him. But that is a conversation we are going to have in part 2. So in part 2, I actually had the honor of interviewing one of Bill Cosby's accusers. Her name is Mrs. Lise Lotte Lublin. She alleges that in 1989, when she was 23 years old and working as a model, Bill Cosby offered to mentor her before building a trusting relationship with her and her family and eventually drugging and assaulting her. Lisa was also the one who successfully fought to have the statute of limitations changed here in Nevada from 4 years to 20 years. So stay tuned for part 2, and we'll find out exactly what happens in these encounters with Bill Cosby. That's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning into Broken Limelight. Don't forget that you can go to brokenlimelight.com and see photographs and video interviews about this case. I have also neatly broken down the timeline of these allegations so you can get a little bit of a better understanding and see just how many women and how similar these accusations are. And not similar like they're all telling the same story, just little details like he has the same MO every time. Okay, be back soon. Bye! Hi, I'm Didi West, and this is Broken Limelight. Welcome back. So this episode is going to be very special because we have a guest here to tell us about her experience with Bill Cosby. If you haven't listened to part 1, I highly recommend you give it a listen as it offers an overview of Bill Cosby's career and the dozens and dozens of allegations against him. Today we have the honor of speaking to one of his accusers, Lise Lotte Lublin. In 1989, Lisa was 23 years old and working as a model. Her agent told her that Bill Cosby was interested in mentoring her. Lisa met Bill Cosby at the Las Vegas Hilton Hotel where they chatted, and he promised to send her photos to a modeling agency in New York. He developed a friendly relationship with her family, talking to her mother over the phone and introducing Lisa to people as his own daughter. So when he asked her back to his hotel room, the Elvis Suite at the Las Vegas Hilton, to perform some improvisation, she assumed that he was evaluating her acting skills to help with her career. She said, "He talked to me about improvisation with acting, which I was completely unfamiliar with because I hadn't done acting at the time. He said he'd walk me through some improvisations. I looked confused because I was. He walked over to the bar, poured a shot, and said, 'Drink this, it will relax you.' I said, 'I don't drink.' And he told me again it would relax me so the lines would flow a lot easier for the improvisations. So I kind of trusted him because he's America's dad. Because he's a figure people have respected for many years, including me. So I took the drink." He fixed her a second drink even though she was still protesting, and he again insisted that she drink it. Within minutes, she became dizzy. He sat on the arm of the couch and called her over to sit on the floor in front of him. Disoriented and struggling to hold herself up, she sat with her back towards him, and he slid forward with his legs on each side of her and his groin up against his back. She was confused what this had to do with acting, and then he started stroking her hair. That was the last thing she remembered before she woke up in her own bed feeling like several days had passed. Her car was safely in her driveway, though she doesn't remember driving herself home. She told her mother about it, and they chalked it up to her having a bad reaction to the alcohol since she never drank. Lisa told very few people about this experience as she didn't really understand what happened to her. Until 2014, when Janice Dickinson came forward, and Lisa's husband, Benjamin, found her story to be uncannily familiar to Lisa's. He said, "You've got to see this. A woman is saying she received items from Mr. Cosby, passed out, and recalls being sexually assaulted by him." Lisa said, "And I watched the interview and started to realize why I most likely passed out." She then reported the alleged sexual assault to Las Vegas police and successfully lobbied to have the statute of limitations for sexual assaults in Nevada extended from 4 years to 20 years.
So what did your life look like back in 1989 when you met Bill Cosby?
In 1989, when I met Bill Cosby, I was right at the beginning of getting my education together. My educational goals were my forefront. That was the most important thing in my life. And I had begun modeling on the side just to supplement because I was paying as I go for education. So, modeling was easy. And at the time, it was like, hey, I could get a job all the time. So I jumped right into that and said, well, yeah, I'll do it. Why not? So that's the whole reason why I met him, is because I had begun modeling and I had my headshot with my agency, and he found the headshot, and he had girls that would come and do interviews that he was obviously, at this point, we know now, soliciting young women to be inappropriate with. Mm-hmm. So unbeknownst to us, we didn't know that. So my agency called and said, hey, I have an interview. I want you to go to the Elvis suite at the Hilton for this interview. And I didn't know if it was a modeling interview or if it was television or what his intent was, just that I needed to go. And so I took myself there, and it was standard practice in those days to, come out and go to a hotel. The modeling agencies, the clients would book rooms all the time. You'd walk down the hallway, there'd be a line of models waiting, we'd fill out paperwork in the hallways, and then we'd wait to shuffle through the rooms. So this was common. We always did something like that when it came to getting booked for a job. And when I got there, it was just me. I rang the doorbell and he answered the door. And when I came inside, there was a dining table, and on the dining table were photos of many models from Las Vegas, just kind of spewed all out on the table. And there were girls that I looked at and I went, oh yeah, I've seen her, I've worked with her, different things like that. So everything looked up and up, and of course it was Bill Cosby. So America's dad, this is pretty incredible that I'm getting to go here and meet with him directly. And my assumption was he must be looking for someone for a movie, because I didn't know anything about him and models. So I figured he was casting for some kind of a show.
Were you excited when your agent told you that he wanted to meet you?
Absolutely. This was one of the biggest celebrities that I've ever encountered at that point. And again, he could take a person's career into a whole nother realm, just knowing him and him being interested in wanting to use you for something, or get a start in something like that. And I was interested because if I could work and go to school, that worked for me. So. Sure.
Was this the first celebrity you've worked with, or have you worked with a celebrity before?
I've through the agency that you run across different people and be on set with different people all the time. It's not like, it's more like an extra position, I'm not going to sit there and be sitting next to the celebrity. I've been on set with multiple celebrities in the past, but they're not people I just can walk over and talk to or socialize with, or people that would be calling my house to look for me. Bill Cosby, when he becomes interested in you, he works his way into your family. He calls you, he looks for you, he talks to your parents, he talks to your siblings. He would call my sister's house all the time because we didn't have the cell phones back in the day. He would call my sister's house looking for me, oh, where's Lisa? Where's she going to be today? Where's she this, that, and another? And he would do that all the time. He would get on the telephone and talk with my mother for hours. He was so intrigued because I'm biracial. My mother's from Scandinavia, father's Black American. They met in the military in Spain. And he was so intrigued at this concept of Caucasian women dating African American men. So they would have conversations all the time. My mother was a psychologist, so she and he would talk all the time because he was interested in psychology as well. So this was a family thing for me.
Yeah, it
You
sounds
know
like
what
he
I
was,
mean?
it sounds like he was more intimate with you than other celebrities you've worked with.
Yeah, I mean, in other celebrity situations, it's a quick hello, quick goodbye, you know, even if you get a chance to talk to them. But he made it out that he had an interest in looking at my career and giving me the opportunity to, you know, really expand on what I was doing, or expand into other areas that I hadn't even considered. He actually talked to me about acting, and he had suggested to me that I take acting courses. And that following summer, because I was registering going to school at UNLV, that following summer, I signed up for 2 acting classes because I was under the impression that he was interested in seeing if there was a career, you know, that he could, you know, put me into, and, you know, whatever from there. So that's how it looked for me.
That's really interesting. Did you? So I understand that you didn't have a clear recollection of what happened until 2014. Before 2014, did you have any reason to believe he may have assaulted you? I mean, I know that there were other accusations, but did you pick up on any rumors or vibes or anything that really made you wonder?
I did not. Even when his son passed away, I sent a condolence card to him. I didn't hear back from him or anything like that, but I was like, this is horrible, you know, his son, you know. So I sent a condolence card, and I was still walking around, you know, if the subject came up or the situation came up, because his picture, the picture of me, him, and my sister was still hanging in our home. So if someone came in and saw it, they're like, oh my gosh, you know, Bill Cosby. And it's like, you know, you go through the story. Yeah, he mentored me is what it turned into, according to our beliefs as a family. He was mentoring me into, you know, turning into this actress. The whole time, though, acting was not something I was interested in. Modeling was not my first choice for what I wanted to do. I knew that I was going to go to school. I knew I was going to graduate with a degree. I just hadn't settled down on what my degree was going to be. So I knew that I was going through school. And again, this was a secondary thing for me. But if I could go as far as I could with it, I was absolutely willing. You know what I mean? To go out there, and I was willing to act. I was willing to model and go out of state to model. I lived in California for a short period of time through my modeling career. But he made it out like he was going to help me with education. He was also going to help me with modeling. He did claim that he took my headshots and my photos and sent them to someone in New York, and they looked over my modeling information and came back with an assessment. They didn't look at me as being a high fashion model. They looked at me as being a commercial model, and I could do well if I wanted to do commercial work, and if I was willing to leave the country, that kind of a thing. Well, at the time I was enrolled in school, so I'm not going to leave the country. You know what I mean? But I could have stayed here and continued modeling. There was never a job. There was never an offer for a job. There was never, you know, the idea. It was more of, he let me make the assumptions and didn't make any, you know, straight facts or clear the information about it. He just kind of let me roll with it and let my ideas, you know, roll around in my head, and you know, delusions of grandeur type thing. So, and that was part of, I think, his motive, you know, the way he operates. You know, he lets you believe that he's going to be the savior into some kind of career, and that's how he gets you hooked.
Right, because so it sounds like he promised you the career, and he told you he was sending your pictures off, and meanwhile he's talking to your sister and your mom on the phone, and then so you have all these promises to hang on, and then even after the fact you write to him when his son passes away, and you didn't get anything back. I can imagine that must have felt kind of strange.
It felt like, well, basically what happened is I had close to a 2-year interaction with him. So all of these things happened over a 2-year process. And what he did to me happened within the second or third meeting that I met with him. When I was conscious, I was already at home afterwards. And I had thought that I drank, he gave me 2 shots of liquor. And I thought, oh my gosh, I reacted so badly to those 2 shots that I made a fool of myself. Shame on me. How embarrassing for my family. How embarrassing for me. He's probably never going to talk to me again. This was me beating myself up because, for one, I didn't even drink alcohol at the time. I was not a drinker and I didn't drink at all. When we went out with friends and everything, I was always the designated driver because everybody knew Lisa didn't drink. So it was totally good with that. But I thought I reacted really badly to it and embarrassed myself. So when he did contact me again, I was really surprised. I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe everything's all right. So I chalked it up as being a mistake that I made, and not knowing what happened or blacking out or repressing the memory made sense. It was my behavior, not his behavior. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I imagine you probably thought it was something like alcohol poisoning, and maybe you just felt stupid about it. So you just chalked it up to, man, I made a mistake.
Absolutely. That's what I thought it was, is I had too much, got alcohol poisoning and
or an allergy
passed out. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Something was not good. So again, I'm operating on shame on me versus shame on him. So I went my whole life. I didn't know anything about the other women. I hadn't heard any rumors. I didn't know about the court cases from 2005. I had no idea what was going on with him. So until 2014, when I realized what had happened, I was still, praising him and feeling like he was this great guy. He was a part of my life for a short period. I grew. That acting class, gave me a lot of security to be more outgoing and to talk in public, to address situations. I think it made me a better teacher because I was able to stand up in front of a crowd or a group of people and be able to articulate what I needed to say. So I grew from the experience with him. To me, everything was positive with the exception of a few incidents that had come across that, again, I could look at and go, did I do something wrong? I don't understand. You know what I mean? Because we first internalize, we look at ourselves and say, we must have made some offense in some type of way for him to behave that way. I wouldn't understand any of the reason. You know what I'm saying? So for me, that's how it was. I was the one that was, looking like a fool. And he, in my mind, looked past that and said, she's okay. I can still invest time and energy into her. She's not a lost cause type of thing. And he knew. I mean, I told him I don't drink, I don't do drugs. I don't drink. I don't do any of that stuff. So, and at 23, 24, I was still young.
Yeah.
I'm the kind of girl that has rose-colored glasses and everybody's wonderful and life is beautiful and, everything is good in the world. You have bad days here and there, but overall, life is a party and laughing and giggling and having, wonderful relationships with your friends and family. So, and I also looked at him. You have to remember, this man represented the same line that the same pedestal that I had my own father on. Mm. This was America's dad, and this was a second representation of a father figure for me. And my father figure for me, I idolized my father, loved him, idolized him. He taught me so much. He made me a strong individual. So immediately I was trusting of him one, I grew up with him on watching him on television and believing everything he said, Sesame Street and all these television shows as a child. So of course I'm going to trust him. I'd never had an experience where someone, a celebrity or someone, when I was in that, and it's not like I had celebrities talking to me all the time, but what I'm saying is that I just didn't have that kind of experience that would be negative. So there was nothing that says, I need to watch out for something.
I imagine that apart from being America's dad, I mean, I feel like all of us accepted him as part of our own family. And I feel like I can imagine that him being so nice and friendly and kind of like one of the family to you, I imagine that only made him look more miraculous to you. He probably seemed like such a nice, amazing person.
Absolutely. He was that amazing guy. And people don't really understand, because even in 2014, when I realized what happened, my husband was the one who actually helped me realize that what the situation truly was. When I took the blinders off and looked back in the stories that I had heard at that point in 2014, then I realized, oh my gosh, this was a monster. And a lot of people, they believe him. Some people still believe him. Mm-hmm. I had to not only realize that I had been assaulted by him, but I had to also understand that this was a person that I loved and idolized and looked up to. And I couldn't separate, or how do you separate who you grew up with and thought was this flawless individual, caring and loving and taking care of the people around them, to the monster who had done what he did. That in itself, I think the public had to deal with, saying, I don't want to let go of the celebrity Bill Cosby that I know and jump into this monster on the other side. That doesn't work with me. That means that I have to, accept that there's horrible and bad things in the world, and that, someone that you believe is great is really not great. Mm-hmm. That's a hard place to be in, especially when you take that person, idolize them, and compare them to someone you absolutely love and adore, which was my father. So that battle was hard for me. And I've given myself today, after years and years and years of dealing with this since 2014, and all the fighting and the fighting to make change, the fighting to not lose who I am as a person. Through all of that, I've had to say to myself, it's okay. It's okay for me to laugh about jokes that Bill Cosby did, that I laughed at when I was younger and I'd always found funny. And it's like all of a sudden I'm supposed to turn it off and go, well, I can't laugh at his joke because I hate him. And it's still a struggle for me. There are moments when I find myself giggling about something and then going, oh my gosh, that's about Bill Cosby. And then do I beat myself up because I laughed about it? You know what I mean? And it's like, it's not fair. I have, 35, 40 years of positive messages that have come from, the things he did as a celebrity. And then I have this incident of him being a monster and knowing what he's done to all these other women through that same timeline, through that same career of becoming a celebrity. And that's very difficult, because again, I am furious about what has happened to me and all these other women. Absolutely furious. And that is where my fight comes from. That is why I change laws. That is why I go to court cases and support other women. This is why I still fight for these changes, because I'm furious and I have to do something with that energy. And at the same time, I've got to, realize that I'm not a bad person because I have a memory that makes me chuckle. But again, it's always an up and down situation. You never know when it can turn on a dime type thing. You know what I mean? Where because your emotions will take over, and then that situation that you thought was pleasant and funny can can immediately become very nasty for you,
Yeah.
you know, because it brings up memories and going, wait a minute, this person who's done this to me. And again, because I think my situation is a little unique with having such little memory of what actually happened, it makes it harder because I don't, you know, and I don't want to remember. Who would want to remember? But at the same time, if I don't remember, do I actually put it behind me if I don't have a memory of it? Can I really process everything? It makes me emotional when I talk about this because there's been I went to a retreat in April with Andrea Constand, and it's coming out very soon, the production of it, and it was all filmed, and we met with Gabor Mate, which is a therapist who worked with a few of us on, you know, trying to get past certain parts of what we're dealing with. And I think what happened with me, aside from being drugged, is it's repressed memory, and little bits and things have started coming out because it's kind of like I have permission to remember. I've already lived through what happened, so these are just memories. And if I have enough strength and I do end up remembering, I have the strength to work through it. But there's still a fear of, oh my gosh, do I have to cross that road? Will I cross that road? Am I going to cross that road? So I still find myself avoiding, you know, I don't want to necessarily do public things. Even doing this podcast makes me a little nervous right now as I'm talking about it, because if that wall is up there and I've started chipping at it, that's a scary place to be. It's very scary.
That's you defending yourself.
Yeah, got to take a breath.
No, absolutely. And I kind of think that maybe predators like him depend on you forgetting it or wanting to believe that it didn't happen. For all the reasons that you explained, you know, because you can't fully recall it. You don't want to talk about it in public and things like that. So, that's so hard. So you have spoken with other victims of Bill Cosby, right?
Absolutely. In 2014, I ended up when I started to realize, and my husband, we talked about it, and it was like, this is real. It's really happened. My mother was furious, and she started calling Oprah and Dr. Phil and all these different shows. And before you know it, I get this call. It had only been like 2.5 weeks. I get this call from the Dr. Phil show. And I thought it was a joke. Somebody was messing with me. You know, this is so-and-so from Dr. Phil's show. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And she explained that my mother had called and that they're having all these women. They had already set it up. They were having these women come on the show. And would I be interested in coming on the show to tell my story? Well, there was nothing that was public at the time. Like I said, it had only been about 2 weeks. And I started having a discussion. I called my mom. I was discussing it with my husband, Benjamin. And I called a good friend of mine, Catherine Woodard, who was with me during that time frame that I knew him and spent time with him. She actually lived in California. He invited me to the studio when he was filming his movie Ghost Dad. Well, I'm thinking, oh, he wants me to come out to the set. He might want to see me, you know, perform a little bit or something. Maybe he has a part that he's interested in putting me in, something. So I thought it was kind of like an audition. And the thing was, I had asked her to go with me. I actually pleaded with her to go with me. I said, you got to go with me. I said, you'll get to meet him. It'll be really cool.
I'm sorry. And that was after the incident, right?
That was after the incident. Okay. But I think what happened is I didn't know, but I knew. My body knew. And so my self-defense just kind of kicked in, and I didn't know or understand why. I just knew that it was important. Whenever I saw him after the incident, I was never alone with him again. There was always somebody with me, my sister, my mother, my family, my friend. I was never alone with him again. So going there and having her support was crucial for me. So she did go with me, and he just kind of, soon as he saw her, he dismissed me. It was like I drove from Las Vegas to California and spent 10 minutes on the set, and he dismissed me and we left. Yeah. And I never understood, again, taking it upon myself, going, what did I do? Why didn't he speak to me about anything? You know, it was like he was just too busy and he wasn't going to have me. Well, now that I've heard about the women that have been on set and how he's locked them in his trailer and then he assaults them that way, now it makes sense. I wasn't alone. There would be no place that I would go that Catherine wouldn't have gone with me. So he couldn't get me alone. And at this point, this was one of the last times that I had seen him face to face. So I just lived my life after that under the assumption that he just wasn't interested in me. I didn't have what it takes when it comes to acting or whatever role he was planning to put me in. And I brushed it off because, again, it wasn't a big deal to me to not get on the television show or to do a movie or whatever it was. That wasn't a big deal for me. My biggest deal was education. So I just sloughed it off. Didn't feel like there was a problem, but any kind of relationship problem between us.
You didn't feel the need to call him back and see where you were in the process or anything.
No. I was like, if he's interested in me, he'll get in touch with me, kind of a thing. And again, and after this process of close to 2 years of him, we had gone out to UNLV. I ran on the track. He tried to get me to run track. I can't run a lick. Okay. Not at all. Absolutely. He had me running laps on the track. He even told people when they saw him, he had been on the UNLV track many times before. And so other students that were out there came over and they're like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing here?" And he actually told people, "I'm here with my daughter. She's running track." But I was there with my mother as well. So I wasn't even alone with him on the track when it came to that.
That's pretty strange.
Well, I think that because he was into athletics, you know what I mean? He had been involved in athletic departments and supporting athletic departments of colleges and athletes and things like that. So to me, I just thought he was looking at, what skills did I have for what position he would want me to play in a role or movie or television show or whatever. So to me, I just felt like all of it was a little bit of, let me see what she's all about. Let me explore who this person is type of situation.
Okay.
But that wasn't the case, of course.
Yeah. So I have a question. Have you ever heard the Spanish fly jokes in all of the years that he has been doing comedy? Have you ever heard those jokes?
I heard the Spanish fly. I believe I heard the Spanish fly jokes when I was younger as a kid, and his comedy skit was on an album, and you'd play the record on the record player. And I had heard it then, but of course, as a kid, I didn't know what Spanish fly was. I had no idea. So I knew that information before I ever knew what Spanish fly was. So it wasn't something that was in the forefront. I wasn't conscious of it. It was just a joke from one of his skits, and it didn't mean anything to me. So I didn't understand it until after I knew about, him assaulting me and others, that it clicked and I went, "Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?" He's describing what he actually does.
Right.
And that's when it blew my mind, because I was like, it's like he's advertising. He's been doing this for years. He's known about this for years, way before me. So when all those little factors fell into place, I mean, I don't know how people cannot believe that he's done this. It's unbelievable that they're like, "No, I'm gonna stay blind to everything that he's saying and joking, and he makes public, and pretend like this is not real."
I saw that it was after all these allegations, I want to say 2014 or 15, that at one of his stand-up shows, a woman got up to go to the bar, and he's a woman in the audience, and he said something to her like, you got to be careful drinking around me.
Yeah. He makes a joke of it.
It's
He doesn't even feel that it's an issue, that it's a problem, or that it's inappropriate. I mean, who thinks like that? Right?
Right. Okay, so I understand that the incident with you happened in 1989, and you came to realize it in 2014. So by the time you realized it, you found out that the statute of limitations in Nevada was only 4 years, and with your husband's help, you helped to change that. So that sounds like an impossible task, and yet here we are. So do you have any words of encouragement for our listeners who might want to fight to change laws like this and don't know where to start?
Absolutely. One of the first things for me was when I didn't know what I needed to do. As my feelings unfolded from 2014 into early 2015, I started to come apart. I started losing it. I was crying in the shower, driving in the car. I would just lose it. And I felt like this giant hole was just opening in my chest, and I was just falling into it. I didn't feel I had control over my life. I didn't feel I could control my emotions. And I was spiraling into depression, or just for me, just losing myself. I wasn't happy and bubbly and, the rosy glasses person that I've been all my life. And I couldn't live like that. I was like, I cannot do this. And my husband was desperately watching this happen and couldn't fix it. There's nothing he could do to fix it, And the more we kind of talked about things, and the more my husband researched, because he would get up every morning and just get on the internet, and he would focus on all the things that are happening around the women that had come forward, and the way that Bill Cosby was behaving, the way the media was responding, and his followers were responding. And it was atrocious to look at people still supporting him and calling us liars and making death threats. And, one of my students, I teach, one of my students had read something on the internet where someone was bashing me. And that student wrote back and said that she was my teacher and she's a good person, and it's not okay for you to talk about her like this, because that's not true. I mean, and I was I wanted to fall apart when I read that, because I was like, that's so incredible. Finally reached a point where we realized that something's got to change. Something's got to be done. And at that point, I had already filed a report. My friend Catherine Woodard, that I told you, she was a detective for the North Carolina Police Department, and she was in charge of sexual assaults. And the first thing she said to me before I ever even went on the Dr. Phil show was, you have to file a report. And I was like, it's 25 years ago. What's the point? And she's like, you have to file a report. It doesn't matter. File a report. So I did file the report. And when I had the interview with the detective, he explained that there was a statute of limitations and that I had missed the statute of limitations. Nevada has a discovery law. I discovered in 2014 that this had happened to me based on being drugged, number one, and possible repressed memories. So the statute of limitations actually didn't apply to me because of that discovery law. The problem with it was I couldn't give any details of an assault. I couldn't explain to them, well, this is what he did and that's what he did. So for them, what was the assault? He drugged me so he could play tiddlywinks. He drugged me so he could braid my hair. But you can't go on assumption.
It seems like it's made to protect him.
It does. And that is what sparked us about changing the laws, because we're going, this makes no sense. You know, you've got people who can't even acknowledge that it's happened to them, but they've got to file a report within a 4-year statute.
Yeah.
And they're not even accepting that it's happened. The first thing you go into is denial. This,
Sure.
not me. No, he may have drugged me, but he didn't do what he did to all those other women. I went through that for months and months and months. And still sometimes it kicks into my head, maybe he didn't do it to me. Well, why didn't he do it to you? You know what I mean?
Right.
What are the odds that he didn't do it to you after he drugged you? You know what I mean? That they're so minuscule it wouldn't even count.
What are the odds that he had some other motive?
Exactly. So we just continued to come back to life. The more we talked about changing laws and figuring out, you know, better ways for survivors of sexual assault to be able to, you know, at least present something against their perpetrators. Anything. You got to have a chance. You got to feel like you have a chance to fight. Some people fight by not engaging. Some people fight by engaging in, you know, bringing charges against these perpetrators. And it all depends on the individual. I would never recommend someone to go and file a report or be involved in this unless they felt they were strong enough or ready enough or had a drive to do this. Because if your drive is to not take it into a public eye, and that includes public, family, friends, just the people around you, that is that person's way of healing or getting to a point where they can heal. That is on them. You know what I'm saying? But my situation was, I've always been a fighter. I've always fought for the underdog. I've always been that person who, you know, would stand up to the bullies when the bullies are, you know, bullying somebody else. I'm the one that gets in between. I'm a rescuer. So this was something I had to do. Now, in order to truly do it for myself, I needed it to be a bigger picture, because now I knew about the other women. Now I knew about how he had done this and the details of what he had done that were so gross. I was aware, and it gave me a mission. It gave me a direction to be able to fight back. And again, if I fight for the students at my school that are growing up, you know, that would ever have to deal with this, I don't want them dealing with, they have 4 years. You know what I mean? It should be abolished. They shouldn't have to ever come to terms with until they're ready to come to terms with it. And then they should still be able to take that perpetrator, you know, to court or to be able to fight against what had happened to them legally. So I was like, this has got to change. It's got to change. And that's when I started to come alive. Every moment that was focused on redirecting that energy brought me back the ability to feel like I had control. And that was extremely valuable for me. And again, it gave me purpose to get up every day and not, you know, cover myself up or sleep all day in the bed and ignore it. Basically, for me, it would have been ignoring it, you know? So that's what got me going to fight. Ben came in and said, you know, he's like, we got to do something. He woke me up early in the morning and said, we got to change the laws. We got to do something. And it was like, yeah, we got to change the laws. That's what needs to happen. And we went on our mission, and we had a very short window because by that point it was mid-January, and the legislative session would end that summer. So we got that law, got a legislator to listen to us, and she wrote the changes, and we started, you know, campaigning to get all of the legislators and assembly members on board with this. And it went fast, very, very fast. So by summer of 2015, we were at the governor's office signing off on extending the statute of limitations from 4 to 20 years for sexual assault for adults.
That's such a huge accomplishment. Like, I wouldn't have thought to see that in my generation, but still, thinking of 2022, and it's 4 years, and in Las Vegas. Like, I heard the podcast you did with Jillian Pensavalle, Let the Women Do the Work.
Yeah.
That's actually one of my favorite podcasts. I was so excited to see your name on it.
Yeah.
But I heard you guys talking about it, and one of the things you said was that, I mean, Las Vegas is a little bit different than all of these other places, and we should truly have different standards or different laws or something different. And another thing you guys said was that even if the predator was the one to come forward and say, you know what, I assaulted 15 women, but I did it 5 years ago, then it's like, oh, you know what, we can't arrest you.
Absolutely. He can stand right there in the police department and admit everything. And even worse than that, civilly, if those survivors that were assaulted by him, civilly, 2 years is all they would have. And that law is still in place today. That is still a law that we are trying to change, that we want it to be. And all these laws should match up. If your statute of limitations is 20 years, that should match up for civil, for children, for everybody.
Sure.
They truly need to be abolished, because there are people who sit on information like this for 40 years and then they want to come clean, or they want, a individual, a survivor wants to tell their story and that person is still around. They could still file charges against that person if it was abolished. And you'd be surprised 40 years later how many of the perpetrators are willing to accept the consequences. But they just get away with it because for some reason, somewhere, people think it makes sense to have a statute of limitations on harm that you can commit against a human being.
I was just thinking that it doesn't make any sense to me, as if any amount of time makes the person less of a predator or makes it less of a crime.
Right. That's the part I don't understand. What is the crime that's right above death? Murdering somebody,
right? Assaulting
somebody, physically harming another individual, whether it's emotional, physical, psychological. You are damaging that person and you're restructuring the way that person's going to live their life, which could be damaging for the rest of their life. We're talking about 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road. This person never ends up getting or doing the things that they wanted to do because they have this scar in their life. And the law thinks that we should limit that.
Right. They're basically excused for their bad behavior after like a little timeout.
Exactly.
Or not even a timeout, because we don't even know about it.
Exactly. And then they wonder why people don't come forward when you, and it's not like you get to say, well, so-and-so did this to me, so throw him in jail. It doesn't happen cut and dry.
Right.
You still have to prove your case. People still have to believe you. You still have to go and tell your story in front of strangers if you go to court, or even telling it to the police officers, or telling it to anyone. You know what I mean? You still have to say those words. Yeah. And there's still rape culture that makes the victim feel that they've done something wrong or that they're out of line. People still blame victims, survivors of this. It's such an awful cycle.
Yeah, I imagine you get a lot of hate for quote unquote trying to bring down somebody who the whole community loves.
Right. And that was very, very, very prominent in the first few years. So people had made death threats against me. They called me liar. They said I was a slut and a whore and I wanted this. And I mean, just horrific things. I did not pay attention or focus on the internet, but my husband was the one who kind of filtered things.
Oh, yeah.
So he was the one that was watching and keeping an eye out and worrying about our safety here at home and what this could be doing to us. And I just didn't really go there. There was very few things that I looked at responses for. But when more and more women came out and more women were able to talk about what happened to them, and more of the enablers around Bill Cosby who didn't want to see this, because who wants to see this? I mean, think about putting yourself in this kind of a situation. Would
Mhm.
you want to make it aware to yourself that you're going, I think that that guy is doing something with that little girl, let's say. You don't want to think that. That scares the crap out of you.
Right.
I mean, think about, you have to get involved. You become a witness. You're a part of this situation. So a lot of people around him, and were enablers and didn't want to come forward until it had gotten so big they couldn't ignore it anymore. And at this point, they were like, I know some of these bad behaviors are out there, and now these people are abusing these women that have come out and told their truth, and I can't sit back and continue to watch this happen. I have to say my little part. And when
Mhm.
those folks started coming out and saying even more, I think that's when the tide started to really turn. So I would say around 2016, 2017, it started to make a change. And of course, the Me Too movement was, getting big involved in these situations, and other celebrities and, other situations that had come out also. And even within our group with Bill Cosby, when more of the celebrities started talking about the situation that happened to them, then it was like the public was like more interested in believing, or it was more believable. And it's hard because they don't know us. They have no
Mhm.
idea who we are. But, my husband always says this, if there was 60 women and 10% were telling the truth, does that change who he is or what he did?
That's a great point.
Right?
Mhm.
Even if it was 1%, one woman still makes him a predator, a sexual assault. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
He still would be a man who raped a woman. You know what I mean? But you've got so many women that are telling you, and they're not only telling you, the people around them are telling you. I remember when she told this story. I remember when she said this to me. I remember what she looked like when she came to the door and she was crying and devastated and explaining the
Sure.
situation. I remember when she got in the car and she was incoherent and passing out in the car. They know, they were there. They know all of this. It's not a giant conspiracy.
Mhm.
It's just what happened. So, and again, I understand, people that are not close to this situation, they don't want this to be real, and they didn't want it to happen. Well, guess what? We didn't want it to happen either.
Yeah. I think there's something interesting about the psychology about us as fans, about how we put up that wall and protect ourselves from that heartbreak of our celebrity.
Absolutely.
And you go, and some of these people go to some strange ends to defend them. And
Yeah.
for somebody that would probably never even remember your name, So I have a question. What do you have to say when people think that women coming forward and accusing a celebrity of sexual assault, what do you say about people who think those women are gold diggers or women looking for money?
I think that they have played into the stereotype, from old school, but yet they don't play into the stereotype of the casting couch and the woman who's got to
Right.
come in back in the 30s and she's got to do something sexually in order to get that role in the movie. Well, I mean, if you're going to play stereotypes, you might as well go with the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
The bottom line is everybody's got to come to terms with how they see the situation and when they can realize it. That the only thing that I say is be open enough to realize that, number one, celebrities are real people who have a job to pretend like they're somebody else.
So this was the part where we had a little connection problem, so we had a little break in the interview. But let me just take this opportunity to ask you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, YouTube is where you can find all of the episodes of Broken Limelight as well as clips of my singing career. Okay, back to the interview.
So I have no idea where we were.
I remember where we were because I was asking. I remember because I wanted to know what you thought about when people call women gold diggers and say that they're just making accusations for money. And I had a question actually, because you, even after the laws you got changed and everything, you never exactly got justice for what happened with Bill Cosby, right? So, and you didn't get a settlement. You didn't really get anything out of it, did you?
No, that's the funny part especially if they accuse me of being a gold digger. And I go, if I was a gold digger, I would have gotten gold. Okay.
Yeah, you'd be the worst gold digger in the world.
Right. But the whole premise of everything that I have been doing to fight and change laws, there is a selfish part of it, because I want to heal and I want to feel better and I want to be a happy person. But in order for me to orchestrate or do what I do, I need to look at it as a broader situation. I need to help somebody else. That's what's important. And in turn, it helps me. But to do it, to have the strength and the power to be able to put myself out there and to know that, people are going to say horrible things like you're a gold digger, to be able to accept that someone calls me a gold digger is to be able to go, I'm out here doing this for other people. Mm-hmm. You can call me a gold digger all day long. It's cost me more money than I'd ever dreamed of, to pursue all of this, the travel that's been involved, the locations. The last, when I went to the Judy Huth, I had to fly to California. I wanted to go, but all of that expense was on me and my husband. We paid for everything. There's nobody sitting around going, here's a money pot. If you want to go help somebody, or you need to go here or there or support another survivor, just dip into the money pot. No, this comes out of our own everything. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? If you go do a television show or a news thing that they really want you on there, yeah, they'll pay you to get there. But I can tell you what, they don't pay all the incidentals. They don't pay for every little tiny thing. You have to dish that out all the time. When we went to change the laws, there was nobody handing over checks. There was one guy, Kavanaugh, I think his name was. There was one guy that was so supportive of this. He said, I want to help you. And we were like, we're not used to somebody wanting to give us money to do. We were like, I don't know. It's okay. And he's like, no. And I had to realize, in order for him to feel that he was a part of this, he needed us to accept. And we're only talking about a few $100s. This is not like he gave us $10,000. This was like $300 or something. He said, please use it to help you get to Carson City. Use it to pay for your hotel, whatever you got to do to get these laws changed. But this is what I can do, and I want you guys to have it. And he sent that to us. And it was hard to accept. And because think about it, if you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, a stranger is going, here, I want to give this to you. And you have to be humble enough to go, I will take this for the greater good, and it's not for me. So it's funny how they say that. And all the women that I know that can still talk, because women that have received settlements, they cannot, there's usually a DNR. They can't talk. DNR, did I say it right? Yeah. Do not resuscitate.
An NDA? I think that's what it's
NDA.
called.
NDA. Thank you. I'm like going, that doesn't sound right.
No, it sounded right to me first. I wouldn't have questioned you until you stopped yourself.
Right. Yeah. I'm going like, wait, that doesn't sound right. So, they can't talk about it any longer. And so we can't have conversations or bounce things off of each other. And I understand that totally. I get it. And, they've had these settlements, and it's usually because there's defamation. It's more like defamation situations versus they actually got settlements for him assaulting them and, what they had to go through. So most of the women have not, and they've put themselves out there, and they've paid for everything, and they've lost relationships because they've talked about this. They've lost husbands because they've talked about this. So, to sit and talk about somebody as a gold digger and not understand the sacrifices that this individual has made, not to mention how it ruins your life. you grow up as a young child with goals and dreams in your life, and you say, when I grow up, this is what I'm going to do, and these are the plans that I have, and this is the road that's going to take me there. And then you got this guy who comes in and totally rips your road apart and leaves you as roadkill on the side, and then you're supposed to pick up and put yourself back on that path. No, you end up on a totally different path. A totally different path, a path of destruction, possibly a path of self-loathing, a path of suicide. Some women, a path of self-destruction. And then you say to yourself, that woman isn't entitled, or that person isn't entitled, man, woman, whoever has been, devastated in this manner, isn't entitled to something to help redirect them. I mean, if you can't, I was totally fine with, if I can get criminal charges against him based on what he did to me or based on what he did to anybody else, I'm in 100%. And I can tell you, every single woman that I have ever dealt with that has been assaulted by Bill Cosby or anyone else has said the same thing. If I can get criminal charges, that is what I want. And what happens is they can't get criminal charges. And the only thing that's left is what? Civil suit. Mm-hmm. That's the only way. Judy Huth's case. Andrew Wyatt sat up there and talked about what a victory it was because they didn't have to pay this big amount of money to Judy Huth for the case of him sexually assaulting her. But what he's so blindly ignorant and tries to redirect the narrative on is, this man has been convicted. Bill Cosby has been convicted in a civil court of sexually assaulting a minor.
Yeah.
Who cares about the money? He is convicted of sexually assaulting a minor. That's a conviction. Even though it's a civil conviction, but it is. They voted it in.
I think that's one thing that people forget, because he got out so quickly, and people forget he didn't get let out because he was found innocent. Mm-mm. Nobody ever said that he's innocent. So
yes,
it baffles me that people still don't believe it. I mean, I never understand it, but this is what, 68 women? At least, I mean, over decades and decades. I mean, if like you said, if 10% of them are true, then that doesn't make him any less of a predator.
Exactly. And that's the sad part. And that's rape culture. And that's why you're doing this podcast. And that's why I do podcasts, is because we have to get people to understand it's okay to sit there and say to yourself, I love this man as a celebrity. He helped change my life, and he helped guide me into these directions that I feel like made me a better person because of the things that he said and did as I was growing up on these television shows. It's okay to toil with that concept that he was this person on television, and he was a monster behind the television. That's everybody. Everybody has a little monster in them. You know what I'm saying? We don't always put it out there, and our monsters don't necessarily hurt other people, but we have our own monsters that are self-destructive to ourselves. If you stop and look at yourself for a second and say, how many times have I sabotaged goals or dreams or things for myself, because of the self-monster that I have inside of me? It's a variation or different levels of that monster. And if you can control it, he obviously can't control it. And obviously it's a big boss monster. You know what I'm saying? But, and he's found a way to manipulate, these two realms that he lives in, of being this monster and then being this celebrity. And he cornered the market on being able to control that, and got away with it for so long because he flat out told everybody what was going on. All kinds of celebrities knew that these little things were going on, but they couldn't take those pictures in their mind of him being this bad and drugging versus, lots of women want to be with him or want to be alone with him. You know what I'm saying? I don't believe he had a bunch of celebrities in the room when he was doing these things, but the picture was there. You had to put the pieces together to see the full scope of it, but no one wants to see the full scope of anybody that's being abused. It's
Sure.
so hard to do. So I understand where people come from. I just wonder, you know, what have you got to look at within yourself that's stopping you from seeing the whole picture? And I still have to look at that with myself. How come I didn't see more of the picture with, when I go back and I realize some of the things, that the way that he behaved with me, the petting of my hair in the room, the me not remembering. But again, at 24, I didn't know about drugs that way. I didn't know you would drug somebody and incapacitate them and do bad things to them. You know, those were just serial killers who tried to, you know, take people's body parts away from movies. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I watched that on the news.
Sure.
I grew up here, and I remember the idea of even a murder coming on the news when I was a kid. It was like one a year. You heard about, there was a murder here. Oh my gosh, there was a murder? You know, it was this huge thing. So I understand. I get it. It makes sense. But at the same time, with the internet and the information that's out there and access to so many things, and going back, and you can look at his stuff yourself. You can watch all the things that he talked about. You can listen to the things that he said, and you can easily find a conclusion that makes sense. But if you haven't seen, okay, we need to talk about Cosby on Showtime. If you have not seen that,
Oh, yeah.
that timeline and the facts being presented, there's no way that you can see something different unless you just choose not to.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's, you know, you're going to have his side regardless of what you see. But it is such a clear, and I feel like it was, to a certain degree, it was unbiased, because the man that you love to enjoy, he showed those parts of it. Camus showed those parts of it. Camus Bell, who
Is he the bald one?
Camus Bell he's the one who produced and directed, and he's the commentator in it.
Uh-huh.
So
he did which one did he produce? Was it the spinoff? I can't remember.
No. He did. We need to talk
the show,
about
the
Cosby.
actual show.
Yeah,
No, we don't.
The actual show. Yeah. And he's in there. You can see, you can hear his voice. He's doing the interviews. Yeah. And the way that the whole production team put the timeline together is, you can really see the beloved individual, and then you can see the monster. And it's just so clear. I don't know a better way to portray it. And it was something that I kind of was repeating over and over again, you know, throughout this whole thing, is people have to understand it's like there's two people there. It's almost like a split personality. And if you don't know the bad side, so many of the ladies had told me that when Bill Cosby would get angry, that he would be mean and vicious and snap at them. I never saw that. So I can't sit here and tell you that he was nasty and mean to me and snapped off at me. I never saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Do I believe them? Absolutely. I feel there's absolutely no reason for them not to be honest about telling me the way that his demeanor was and the way that they treated him. Now, I know how easily he dismissed me when I came out to California, but he didn't do it in the same way that some of the women describe, but he still dismissed me. Mm-hmm. So I know that, you know, that it's possible, but it makes sense.
He just flips the switch on you.
Exactly. And that's it. There's a switch. It's an on and off. Oh, I've got to be in front of a camera and let my people see me as this wonderful, flip that switch on. Oh, now I've got to.
Like you said, he makes a career off of being able to act a different way, just like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And he was brilliant at it. The man is brilliant. And I can say that because I do struggle with that back and forth of, you know, hating this individual and toying with my feelings of growing up and loving the persona that he was. But you know, that's this on and off switch. It comes and then it goes. There's evil and then there's perception of good.
Mm-hmm.
and that's what you got.
Yeah. It's almost like he's grooming his audience almost. You know, like we all care about him because we grew up this way. He's never done us dirty before.
Right. And you put it really well when you say it's grooming his audience. That's the same way, the way that you know him and you don't have that direct contact with him. That's the same way he grooms your family.
Yeah.
So when you say something wasn't right when I was with him, Mom, your mom goes, "That's Bill Cosby. What's wrong with you, girl? Right. You have totally misconstrued the whole situation." You know what I mean? And I know other women's parents who basically called them a liar because they're like, "You're talking about Bill Cosby. What's wrong with you?" Like there's something wrong with them.
That's heartbreaking. It
is heartbreaking. But at the same time, the parents have been duped. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Just like everybody's been duped by his persona, his celebrity persona. And to a certain degree, and I don't want to tell people to be angry, but you guys should feel duped as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He did it to you guys too, in the sense of, I'm only going to let you see this part of me, and I'm going to let you believe in me, and I'm going to push all the right buttons for you to idolize me. And then, I'm going to keep this secret behind. I'm going to lie to you, right to your face. I'm going to teach you to grow up and lie to you at the same time.
Right. So I imagine, like, along with your disappointment, you probably felt pretty heartbroken when you realized that he did this to you. Did a part of you kind of feel like coming forward with it, you were going to break everybody else's heart too? Did you feel kind of responsible for that controversy that you were adding to?
Absolutely. That was one of those hurdles that I had to find a way to overcome. And it was not easy because, again, if I focused on myself, then I was, letting down his public if I focused on myself. But if I focused on protecting anybody else, then it changes the narrative. It's not about me disappointing, the people that follow him or us in general, all of us who believed in him initially. It's about protecting what could happen to somebody in the future. You know what I'm saying? Not having this information leaves us unprotected. And that was more powerful and more important than me dealing with, hey, now I'm in this situation where I'm bringing down the black man. Okay. Sorry. I have a black man father too. Guess what? And my father wasn't perfect. He had his flaws, but I can accept them because he was a real man. He was a real human being. You know what I'm saying? His flaws weren't hidden and he had one persona out there and another persona somewhere else. If my dad wanted to spank my butt, he'd spank my butt in Target versus he'd spank my butt at home. It didn't matter where it was. If he's going to discipline you, you're going to get the discipline wherever it needs to be done. You know what I'm saying? And he wasn't terrible at that. But the point is that you saw my dad. When you met my dad, you knew who he was. You saw all sides of him. He didn't hide it from anybody. And of course, he wasn't doing anything that was inappropriate to people. So that's another one.
And he didn't do anything to dupe anybody. He wasn't, he didn't do anything to dupe anybody
Exactly. He's not trying to get something from people. That wasn't who my father was. And that's who we thought Bill Cosby was. He was there to help support and, bring up the community and bring the black community up, and keep people in positive concepts of themselves. I mean, how do you try to teach someone to have a positive self image and you're doing these things? You're breaking down women and destroying their self-image and destroying their self-confidence and self-esteem and who they are as an individual, and at the same time trying to build people up. I mean, what must that be like in your head to be constantly manipulating and figuring out how you're going to harm another individual at the same time you're trying to get Black America to go to college and to educate themselves and to, change their dialects and to do all these different things that he thought was, going to help the community. That must be a wild circus in your brain, just constantly moving like that, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
think about, I got to manipulate and figure out ways to be horrible, and I got to figure out ways to be wonderful.
Yeah. That is pretty interesting.
Isn't it? It's like,
kind of maniacal.
Right? I'm trying, it's like the Joker in Batman or Two-Face, these people where you're going like, how do they, 1 minute I'm going, but Joker never has a good side. So
I know.
It's always diabolical.
And
so
for decades.
It still doesn't even, it still doesn't even make sense, but that you got both of them in there just toiling around in your brain, and today I'm going to be evil, and then 3 hours from now I'm going to be wonderful, and then 2 hours I'm going to be evil. My goodness.
That is pretty wild.
Right?
I can't imagine meeting him in person and seeing those sides of him like that. Or like you said, like the moment he dismissed you, that must have been weird.
And that's how it was. And I'm thinking to myself, I drove all the way from Las Vegas to California. Why did he have me come here to send me away? I don't understand. But again, I was like, well, he's a celebrity. They're fickle, just chalking that stuff up, because I don't know that I wasn't he didn't have me in a situation where he could get me alone.
Yeah, his plan didn't go as planned.
Yeah, his plan was foiled, and mock my words, foiled. His plan was foiled, and so I got away with the good guy, the Batman, and took me away. So you know what I mean? I mean, think about it. It's kind of that situation, and I tell you,
it's crazy that could have happened to you again.
I know, and this time, and I know several women that he didn't drug them when he was on set. He just went after them anyway. So that could have been a situation. I read about that. Yeah, that could have been a situation where I was aware. And where could I have been derailed? Maybe I didn't even go to college. Maybe I didn't become an educator. You know what I mean? Maybe all those kids that I've gone through in 25 years of teaching, wouldn't have had the experience, and kids that say I've changed their lives. I mean,
that's crazy to think about. Yeah.
I might not even have my children, because it could have. That's why I'm saying, to call people a gold digger, when you think about everything that it changes the direction of that person's life, of what they could have or what they plan to, and it just gets yanked out from under them. And they deal with this for years. And some of these women haven't told for 25, 30 years. Yeah. They just have tried to deal with it day in. And if you haven't told somebody, what are the odds are that you got any help for you to get back onto a road that makes sense and is healthy for you?
Sure.
I mean, we're talking a lifetime. $2 million is not worth a lifetime. I don't think any one of these women would accept $2 million and say, yeah, you can derail my life for the rest of my life, and I'll just take the 2 million now. Because I know I wouldn't. I know I wouldn't swap I feel so lucky in comparison, because I've blocked out the memory, or the drugs were so powerful that I don't remember. I feel so lucky because I was able to follow the pathway that I had always set for myself, and all those things have been achieved. Did I notice a change in 2014? Absolutely. I was, like I told you, I was spiraling out of control. I was taking on too much responsibility at work. I was feeling pulled. It was like I was I'm just going to work my way through all of this trauma so I don't think about it. So I was so overworked that I wasn't able to sleep and I wasn't able to rest, and I was falling apart emotionally. I was still doing my jobs. I was still going to school. I was still getting straight A's. I mean, because everything turned into that, you know what I mean? That was going to be my power. But I had to go to a therapist, and my therapist was like, you have to be able to say no.
Mm.
And I was like, wow, I don't know how to say no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I say no, then I have to deal with what's happening to me emotionally, because now my brain has time to settle down and think about the things that have actually happened and the things I've experienced, and you know, the women that I've talked to, and knowing what kind of pain all of us are going through. I have to stop and face that. No way. Count me out. Sign me up for something else to do at work. Sign me up for another class, you know?
Yeah.
And that was, and that's because that was kind of like my pathway growing up. You know, I have schedules. I have, everything's overly scheduled and overly done. And you know what I mean? So that was my coping mechanism, is to go, I'll just stretch myself so thin that I don't have to think about it or feel it. Some people resort to drugs to not feel. I would resort to, you know, overwork.
Mm.
So.
Yeah, you kind of find a way to dissociate from it.
Exactly. The perfect word, dissociate from it. And that was my way. For me, it was working. It was working, but it wasn't working, because the more I got involved, the more I was losing myself. I was just falling back into that black hole again. And this was after we had changed the laws in 2015. So the law got changed. So that period was like 6 months. And it was like, now where am I? Now I'm back to square one again. I changed the laws. I felt better. It pulled me up. It made me feel better. And then there was a black hole. And then I started to kind of overwork. And then going back to the counselor, and with the counselor, I started to realize it's another way of avoidance. You know, I'm avoiding what's really happening. Going to this retreat with Andrea Constand and doing that, the documentary there with Gabor Mate, I was able to get to a place where I understand that, number one, I don't need to overwork myself. When I reach the point of truly dealing with this, or dealing with it a little bit more, because I deal with it in little bits and pieces. I might go 2 or 3 weeks where it's cognizant, and then I avoid for 2 months, and I feel like life is great, and then it creeps back into my life because it's not finished. Sure. You know what I mean? And in order for me to finish it, it has to be in the forefront. You have to deal with it. You have to get to a point where you've said, I'm letting go of this, or I'm done with it, or I've processed through it. So this is my process, and I'm not there yet. I know, at least, especially Gabor, he was so wonderful. He got me to realize just my awareness. I know that I'm avoiding it. Before, I wouldn't look at myself avoiding it. I would find things to put in the way of seeing that. So at least now I know I'm avoiding it. I'm aware of that avoidance, and I'm giving myself a timeline without setting a date. So I know I'm avoiding it. I know it's something I need to deal with. I'm bringing it up more and more in my interviews, that I'm aware of it, and I know that I'm avoiding it, because I wouldn't talk about it in normal life, because that's a little too real. At least in the interviews, it's controllable, because I can use the excuse when someone asks me for an interview, then I bring it up again to kind of, you know what I mean? That's my pacing, my way of dealing with it.
That makes sense.
Right? So it's easier for me. I can go, okay, yeah, in the interview, I'll talk about it again. If I have another interview, I'll talk about it again. So I do know that that's there, and I do think about it. But again, I don't feel I have the courage yet to deep dive. I know it's there, but I'm just not ready yet. And
I don't blame you.
Yeah, and the retreat was only in April, so I don't feel like I'm taking there's not an issue if I take too long. If it takes long, it takes long. I'm
Sure.
giving myself the freedom to truly process and realize that I am avoiding. So don't use the avoidance as a way to control that I never get to it. If that makes sense. If I said that okay.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, so it looks like we're running out of time again. So let me ask you. Oh yeah, so I heard that you're a fan of true crime as well. That you're starting to get into that. Do you think there's a reason that so many women are fans of true crime and true crime podcasts these days?
Definitely. Number one, women are problem solvers as far as I'm concerned. Which point. We are multitaskers. Okay. So we can see it from all kinds of angles and handle all kinds of situations. But a lot of crimes are perpetrated against women as well. Mm. And being repressed as women, I mean, even this, Roe v. versus Wade, this is another situation where others are wanting to control what's going on. That the one thing that women have ever wanted for as long as ever is, let me control me. Let me have control over me. This is that I am who I am. This is my body. This is my mind. These are my actions and responsibilities. Just let me be me. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's a part of the situation. We've been pushed in the back, with our being extremely intelligent, being extremely, supportive, being extremely smart. I mean, just, we are so universal, just so incredible as creatures that people need to really see the power that we have within us. You know what I'm saying? And we as women need to see that power and realize, we give birth, you know what I mean? We grow babies inside our bodies. That's pretty remarkable.
It's miraculous.
Yeah. So I definitely, I think that's a part of it. We want to get in, we want to hear each other. We want to know what's going on. We haven't had that, men have been the ones that have been, from the old days until the present, kind of the leaders, let's say, to a certain degree in television and whatnot, you know what I'm saying? And this is another way for women to show, we've got what it takes. You have underestimated us for way too long. You need to really see us for who we are, which is really wonderful, because I feel like that's the kind of husband that I have, my Benjamin.
You absolutely do. I was going to say, so often we have to convince our husbands, and even some of the women in this case, they said that their bosses didn't listen, that their loved ones were like, don't open that can of worms. And here's Benjamin, just like every step of the way, pushing you and like you said, waking up early in the morning to do his research. That's incredible. You were incredibly fortunate. You guys are a great team.
Absolutely. Did you hear about what happened when we went to the Judy Huth case? So I have to tell you. So originally when I testified, I try to go fast. Originally when I testified, his publicist, Andrew Wyatt, Bill Cosby's publicist, was bad mouthing and talking terrible. He had even said things about me and the other women. Some of the things weren't true. He misconstrued them. Well, Benjamin was furious. So during a break during the court, we had to go to lunch, and we ended up walking into the restaurant that he was sitting at. And I said, Ben, we got to go. We got to go because they're here, Andrew Wyatt and his crony. And Benjamin was like, no, I gotta address this. So Ben started talking to him, saying, I got a bone to pick with you. I want to talk to you about, what you said about my wife and the whole 9 yards. And Andrew Wyatt said something like, well, maybe we should step outside to talk about this. And Ben says, oh, so you're challenging me to mutual combat. Well, they have a law in Nevada for mutual combat. So Ben's like, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Well, Andrew's like, well, I don't want to dirty my $1,000 suit. The 2 suits that he has every time we see him, he wears the same suit over again. So he's going on. And I'm turning to Ben and I'm going, no, we got to go. We got to go. We got to go. And Ben turns to me and he looks at me and he says, Lisa, I need to do this as a man. And I was like, okay. And immediately I backed off. Like, I understand where he's coming from. Now, Ben's not going to jump over the table and attack the guy. Ben's like, you said we could do it. Let's step outside and take care of business. That's where Ben was. He was all business. So he's waiting outside. He's waiting outside. Andrew won't come out. He calls the sheriff from the courthouse and he asks the television people to come over there because he's afraid that Ben is going to kick his behind outside. So this whole thing kind of comes around. Nothing happens. It all kind of gets squashed, but you can tell what a little scaredy pants he is, right? Mm-hmm. So we're at the Huth case just a few weeks ago, and we're outside, and we're standing outside, and he's standing over on the side. Benjamin had a lighter he couldn't take into the courtroom, and he'd put the lighter kind of down on the bushes, and Wyatt's standing by the bushes. So Ben says he's going to go get the lighter. And I turn and I see Ben and he's walking. Well, Wyatt happened to be standing where the lighter was on the phone. So Ben's walking over there with all this intent to go get his lighter. And Wyatt goes, oh my God, what do you want, man? What do you want, man? He's holding his phone out and you can just see the guy shivering. Now, this is a bully. This man is one of the biggest bullies you could ever. He's always talking about the women, telling him that we're liars. I mean, just terrible things come out of his mouth. And he is scurrying like the scared kid on the playground. Ben walks right past him and picks up his lighter and then walks back over to me. And Wyatt's running around going, man, nobody walks up behind me. Nobody walks up behind me. And I kind of went, well, he just did walk up behind you. And Wyatt's like, oh, and he's backing up to get back to where the front of the courthouse is, where some of the lawyers are. Ben's not even near him. Ben's just walked back over to us. He didn't do anything but pick up the lighter. It was so like, wow.
That is hysterical. I
could
love
not
that
believe it.
I love Benjamin. I love that he did that.
Yeah. I tell you what, because he's like, Lily Bernard says when we were at the courthouse and he was going to engage in mutual combat. And I had gone over to Lily and she said, where's Ben? I said, oh, he's about to get in a fight with Andrew Wyatt. And she says, you mean to tell me he's over there fighting for your honor? And all of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, my husband is fighting for my honor. And it made me so emotional. And I realized, and Lily was just like, man, she said, that is so incredible. And I was like, well, he's fighting for your honor too, because he does not put up with Andrew Wyatt talking about any of these women, because Benjamin knows all of them. He loves all of them. He talks to them on the phone he talks to them on the phone, and I haven't even talked to him on the phone. You know what I'm saying? He has his own relationships, and they're beautiful relationships, and we love every one of these women and support them 100%. So
I love that. I love
thing.
how much you guys have done together. You guys are such a power couple. Okay, so that's about it. Do you have anything else that you'd like to say to our listeners before we wrap up?
The only thing is, if anyone feels that, this is important for them, it's something that they have to get out there, find a safe place, find someone that's safe. It may not be in your family. It may not be someone that's directly close to you, but there's a lot of women out there that will listen to you and hear you and provide support to you, to help you get where you need to be. And if that's at a police station filing a report, or if that's just at a hospital, if you need, someone to support you there, or if they just need an ear, please, find that person. That's the biggest thing. If you don't feel like it's safe at home, find some place outside of the home that can help you. That's my biggest thing is I cannot tell you how valuable it is to be able to call up any one of my girls from our survivor sisterhood, to have a conversation with them, to know that they are going to be supportive, believe everything that is said, and there's no judgment. They just listen. They're just there 100%. It's a beautiful feeling. And I want everyone to have that.
I love that. I'm so glad you guys all have each other.
Yeah, it's really powerful.
All right, Lisa. Well, you guys are incredible. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me, and I'm sure that my listeners are going to love this as well. So, thank you so much. I'll be in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was nice considering the content, but yes, it was absolutely wonderful. It was wonderful meeting you.
Today, Lisa lives in Las Vegas with her husband Benjamin and her children, and she works as a middle school teacher. She and her husband continue to work to legally protect children who were victims of sexual assaults. The changes they were able to have made in the laws gave the survivors the power to take their abusers to court as adults. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Broken Limelight, and thank you so much to Lise Lotte Lublin for taking the time out of her day to do this interview with me. I can't put into words how grateful I am to have this firsthand account of somebody who knows the problems in the justice system and is working so hard to make changes. So thanks again to Lisa and Benjamin, and anybody else who is out there fighting the battle with them. Don't forget that you can go to brokenlimelight.com and there is a broken down timeline of the Bill Cosby accusations. You can find Didi West and Broken Limelight on social media. We also have a brand new Patreon page where you can access all of the episodes 2 days before they come out. It's only $1 a month, and it means the world to me. Okay, friends, thanks again. Until next time, bye!